It was a chilly morning when I first noticed something unusual. The cemetery, where I worked as a groundskeeper, was usually quiet at dawn. Only the distant coo of mourning doves and the soft rustle of wind through crooked branches accompanied me. But that morning, I paused in my routine. As I inspected the row of gravestones, my eyes caught sight of fresh soil atop one of the older graves, dating back to the early 1900s. My shovel dug into the earth easily, the soil fresh and pliable. I shivered, adjusting my jacket, feeling something akin to an ice cube slide down my spine. I dismissed it as a prank. Kids trying to scare the old man who roamed the graveyard under the moon. Yet, somewhere at the edge of my thoughts, a whisper tickled my common sense, suggesting otherwise. The morning light started to paint the world in soft yellow hues as I turned away, trying to shake off the uneasy chills creeping over my skin. The next day felt heavier, with clouds draping the sky like thick woolen blankets. I tried to focus on my tasks, trimming and tending, yet every step felt as though I trudged through a swamp of nerves. The sensation that I was being watched clung to me persistently, especially when I found another grave disturbed again, one long forgotten. The soil seemed untouched by natural erosion, as if someone had taken great care to make it appear new. A scrape of a twig behind me made me jump, my heartbeat thudding loud in my ears. I spun around, but only the swaying tree branches greeted me. As I resumed my work, distant thunder rolled like a groan from the sky, the kind that makes you clench your jaw in expectation. That whispering voice had grown louder, filled with a certainty I dared not entertain aloud. I was not alone in this graveyard. As dawn broke on the third day, I was reluctant to leave my house. My imagination had run wild the night before, fed by the windy whispers outside my window. Yet work called, and so did the chill climbing up my neck as I walked my usual path. Just when I thought I might have peace, there it was, a third grave, soil contoured and rich as fresh earth. Shivers raced down my spine as if traced by icy fingers. More unsettling was the shadow I swore I saw from the corner of my eye, skirting just beyond the edge of consciousness, slipping behind the old mausoleum. My breath puffed white in the cold morning air. Sound drained from the world, all aside from my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I stood, paralyzed, bound by a dread that rooted me in place before my courage mustered enough strength to turn away. Heart hammering like a war drum. On the fourth day, my routine was overshadowed by tension tight enough to snap. Every rustle, every whisper of wind through the gnarled trees seemed amplified, echoing through the cemetery as I carefully tended the old rose bushes by the Morton family plot. A flicker of movement drew my attention, or was it a trick of light? I blinked, and the shadow seemed to vanish, but there was no mistaking the feeling that settled, a presence that wasn't mine alone. The sensation was chill, like stepping into a shadowed room from a sunlit street. I whispered a curse under my breath, wishing for my old life back when the greatest mystery was how to unclog a drain. But this strayed too far from the safety of routine. The air was thick, with a low fog on the fifth day, an uncanny quiet settling over the cemetery, broken only by the squelching of my boots on the wet grass. The sky seemed pregnant with rain, low and oppressive, as if it pressed down, making every breath an effort. I hesitated before approaching the oldest section, my hand brushing absently against the row of smooth, chilled stones. That's when I saw them, figures, specters almost, sweeping gently among the gravestones. My pulse quickened, a drumbeat in the stillness. They moved with unhurried grace, stirring the fog like a dance. I clutched my jacket tighter around me, fighting the urge to flee. As I took a tentative step forward, a faint melody reached my ears, a song carried by the breeze, chilling in its beauty. The next morning, I was listless with dread, barely managing a cup of black coffee before I had to face the cemetery again. The birds sang a choir of despair as I stepped onto the soft earth. Again, I found myself drawn to the old section where the shadows had danced. The air was still, the world paused, as if holding its breath. I tiptoed closer, ears straining to hear beyond the deafening thud of blood in my temples. The shadows were gone, but their presence lingered, a shiver that refused to leave. My gaze fixed on the graves where I'd seen the soil disturbed. The ground seemed to breathe, puffing dust into the low-hanging mist. As if in a dream, whispers floated on the wind, half-formed words in a language I couldn't understand. By the seventh day, my mind frayed like old rope, unraveling with every passing hour. The whispers in the cemetery seemed to follow me now, clinging to the corners of my house like old cobwebs. I jolted awake in the night, blankets twisted around me, drenched in sweat, heart racing with the certainty that something was waiting just outside. Come morning, the sun seemed brighter, almost blinding, yet the cemetery loomed like an unsolvable puzzle. I walked the paths I knew by heart, eyes tracing the disturbed earth, trying to decipher what hand had so meticulously upended my world. I felt more a spirit between realms than a man, tied to the earth in which these lost souls lay. My shadow stretched long across the graves, a mirror of my torment. The situation worsened by the 8th day. Even the familiar caw of crows seemed a specter of doom. I stood at the gate, gripping the cold metal, debating if I should enter the cemetery at all. But duty and curiosity are powerful spurs, often unkind to the sensible. As I walked the worn paths, each footfall echoed that haunted place. Time lost its meaning there, hours suspended in fragile balance. Tracing steps to the furthest corner, I saw footprints, bare feet, the sticky morning mud etching their journey. Every muscle tensed, skin pebbling in the chill. These prints trailed onwards to the foundation of a crumbling chapel where no living soul had ventured for years. My fingers brushed the cool stone, a sign of ancient faith now tainted by modern mystery. Fear mingled with fascination on the 9th day, eating away at my resolve. I felt the cemetery pull at me, drawing me back each morning like the tide. As the sun's first rays reached across the grounds, I steeled myself, moving towards the chapel ruins once more. The air pulsed with an energy, as if those ancient stones were alive with secrets unsaid. A shiver prickled the back of my neck as I felt eyes upon me, unseen yet undeniable. But all was still, save for the distant rustle of leaves. Peering inside the chapel, I saw shadows shift in the corners, shapes that seemed almost human before dancing back into the gloom. I withdrew sharply, my breath expelled in a sharp gasp, the understanding flooding my brain. I was intruding on something older than time. The 10th morning arrived. Anticipation gnawed at me like a beast. I dressed carefully, movements sharp and calculated, half expecting a confrontation. The fog was denser, the air tighter, as if the cemetery itself was holding its breath. My footsteps were the only sound, crunching against the gravel path that wound upwards into mystery. With heart pounding, I passed gravestones that stood silent witness to the legacy of those beneath. I approached the disturbed graves one last time. The shadow figures emerged as if from the very air, gliding silently towards me. Each step they took resonated like a heartbeat in the depth of that silence. Closer, their faces resolved as neither living nor dead, holding the secrets of ages. I was rooted, caught between fear and an overwhelming sense that I was finally learning the cemetery's truth. My trembling ceased on the 11th day, as if accepting fate. The fear settled into a kind of reverence. Shadows lingered at the edge of my vision, promises of hidden knowledge and unguided wisdom. I walked amidst their world, my world, no longer as a custodian of the dead, but as a participant in the dance of shadows. Each step I took fell in time with a melody just beyond hearing. The rustle of leaves marked my path as I knelt beside the oldest grave, its date worn by time. A hand cold as marble rested upon my shoulder, reassuring in its unnatural weight. In that touch, memories flooded, not mine, theirs echoes of lives once full, now reduced to shadows. When I awoke on the 12th day, the house seemed calmer, the usual creaks subdued like whispers hushed by dawn's light. I felt lighter, as if the truth had lessened the weight of my bones. The trip to the cemetery was less a routine, more a communion. The morning air was crisp, every breath invigorating. As I approached the gates, the cemetery looked different, not ominous, but beautiful in its melancholy. With each step, the shadows embraced me, the whispering winds a symphony in their presence. I understood now, beyond fear, that this ground was my keeper too, as I was theirs. Like threads of a tapestry, I was bound to the stories written in the soil. On the 13th day, the cemetery wore an uncommon stillness. As the sun crept higher, I felt drawn towards the central crypt, a place of secrets, wrapped in stone and shadow. The ancient doors creaked open under my hand, a portal to the past. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and time. Flickering candles lit by no human hand cast elongated shapes on the walls. The shadows within flickered like leaves in a breeze, revealing stories etched in silence. As I crossed the stone threshold, a voice, soft, feminine, drifted through the crypt, not in words, but in emotion, longing, sorrow, and a strange sort of kinship. My heart ached with the weight of knowing. The penultimate morning arrived with a thunderstorm threatening at the horizon. I felt the cemetery's eyes upon me, urgent and knowing. My footsteps quickened along the slick paths, the taste of rain sharp in the air. Old trees groaned against the wind. I moved swiftly past the chapel, following the feeling in my chest like a compass. Dark clouds swirled above, stitching the sky with flashes of light. I found myself back at the graves, and the shadows rose with the storm, drawn into corporeal form by the electricity in the air. Their gaze held me fast, eyes fathomless as night seas. The truth crashed over me like the deluge that followed. I was part of their world, awakened by their secrets. The 15th dawn came quietly, the storm residue sparkling on grass blades. I felt renewed resolve as I entered the cemetery, the air sweet with the scent of earth. The sun peered over the horizon, casting long beams that split the morning mist, harbingers of dusk. The shadows waited, softly animated by the light. I understood my role now, not as groundskeeper, but as guardian. I wandered among the graves, listening to their stories, their memories forming a grand tapestry only visible to those who dared see. I found peace in their company, knowing I was never truly alone, interwoven with the spirits of this sacred space. As I left the grounds that day, the cemetery sighed with contentment. A living, breathing entity, I, its humble servant, walked between worlds, the shadows my constant companions.